Hello, welcome to Bible Bites. In our last Bible Bites, we said that this time we would try to, in the short period we have, look at the subject of what is the Bible hell. We'll just recap a little so that we can get to where we were at the end of the last talk. We were talking about the close of the 1,000 years reign of Christ, and we read there about the end of the 1,000 years reign of Christ. It says, when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison and shall go out to deceive the nations, which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. And they went up on the breadth of the earth and compassed the camp of the saints about. Now, the term saints is those who are with Christ, had been raised at the 1,000 years earlier, when Christ first returned, and clothed upon with immortality. So it's a term, saint, in the Bible for the believers. It's not used as it's used in the churches. And so the Christ and the believers who will be immortal rulers for 1,000 years there, they shall be compassed about in the beloved city, which is Jerusalem. And fire is a prophecy, and fire came down from God out of heaven and devoured all those rebellious peoples and nations. So they are destroyed. So the rebellious living at the end are so destroyed, as we've seen there. But the rest of those who have died during the 1,000 years reign of Christ, they will be raised from the dead and judged, and if faithful, will be clothed upon with immortality. So then there shall be no more sin and death, as we read further in this chapter. We read further, verse 20, verse 12 rather, to 15, that death and hell is destroyed. And I saw the dead, small and great, stand before God, and the books were opened, and another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books according to their works. That's the people that have lived and died during the 1,000 years reign of Christ. Then it says, and death and hell delivered up the dead which were in them. And they were judged every man according to their works. And death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death. And whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. So there it says how that death and hell were cast into the lake of fire and destroyed. So what is the Bible hell? That's the question that we said we would look at this time. What is the Bible hell? The usual original word for grave, we'll look at grave and also the word hell in the Bible, and we find it's the same word. So the word for grave and also hell in the New Testament to begin with is the same word. It's the word Hades, Hades, and essentially Hades signifies the unseen place. Now the pagan Greeks wove a whole mythology about what happens after death. And so there's a whole mythology associated with Hades. But in the Bible, Hades is the unseen place, which is just a term for the grave. In Hosea, we get the Hebrew word for grave. In fact, it's all the way through. It appears about 65 times in the Old Testament. And we read Hosea 13, verse 14. I will ransom them from the power of the grave. I will redeem them. This is God's people, God's servants. I will ransom them from the power of the grave. I will redeem them from death. O death, I will be thy plagues. O grave, I will be thy destruction. So there's a time when Christ returns, before he even starts the 1,000 years reign, all those who are responsible to his judgment from the days of Adam until his return, they will be raised and judged. And if found worthy, they will be clothed upon with divine nature, immortality. And so I will ransom them, his servants, from the power of the grave. I will redeem them from death. Then it can be said, O death, where is thy plague? Where be thy plagues? O grave, I will be thy destruction. And the word for grave there in Hebrew is Sheol. It's the same word that is rendered hell sometimes by the King James, in the King James Version or the Authorized Version. So what exactly is the grave, and what is the Sheol signifying in the Bible? Well, this saying, as it were, this writing, O death, I will be thy plagues, O grave, I will be thy destruction, is re-quoted by Paul. And in the New Testament, 1 Corinthians 15. Now, the New Testament has been written to us in Greek originally, and from there being translated into English, of course, and other languages. So he uses the Greek word instead of Sheol. He uses the corresponding Greek word. So let's read it. So when this corruptible, that's what we are now, shall I put on incorruption, that's the believers accepted when Christ returns at the resurrection, before the 1,000 years reign of Christ, they will put on incorruption. In other words, this body, which is corruptible now, shall be made immortal, bodily immortality. We dealt with this previously. And this mortal shall put on immortality. Then shall be brought to pass the saying that is written, and then he quotes from Hosea chapter 13, verse 14. Death is swallowed up in victory. O death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory? So when he quotes from Hosea, where the Hebrew word is Sheol, we are given the Greek word in the New Testament as Hades. So they are the same. The Sheol of the Old Testament is the Hades of the New, and vice versa. And you can see they are rendered grave. The confusion comes that on occasion the King James Version renders these words as hell. So we see in the Old Testament the original Hebrew is Sheol, and when we quote it in the New Testament, the equivalent Greek is Hades. We find that in the King James Authorized Version, we find there are, of the 65 occurrences in the Old Testament of the word Sheol, in the Old Testament manuscripts, the Authorized Version or King James Version translates this word as grave 31 times, but also as hell another 31 times, and as pit 3 times. Now, Smith's Bible Dictionary says that Sheol should always be rendered grave or pit. So, were the translators wrong where they've translated 31 times this word Sheol as hell? Well, technically no, insofar as the original English word hell signified to cover. For instance, the word helmet is a head covering. And in horticulture, when they cover the stems of the potato plant so that it produces more, when they cover the stem, they call it helling potatoes, helling, or covering the stem of the potato. So the word hell signifies a covering. So as a covering, there's nothing wrong with the word, but the problem is that a whole mythology has been woven around this word of some underworld that where souls are tormented for all eternity, etc. It's not in the Bible, but the thing is that this is what people think when they read it. So therefore, Smith's Bible Dictionary says really it's misleading to render the word Sheol as hell. It should always be rendered grave, because that's what it means, or pit. So hell being the grave means we all go to hell at one point or another. In other words, life comes with one guarantee, just one, that one day we shall die, sooner or later. That's the only guarantee we have. We all die. And then we die. When we die, we're usually buried. And therefore, we all go to the grave. And if the grave is the Bible hell, or the Bible hell is the grave, then all of us go to that one place at some point. So when we die. Now, there is a resurrection, of course, which we've just touched upon and we've dealt with more fully earlier in other Bible bites. Looking at Psalm 89, verse 48, we read, "What man is he that liveth and shall not see death? Shall he deliver his soul from..." And the word soul is not, it's not an immortal term. It's a term for a living, breathing person or animal in the Bible. That's another subject. But nevertheless, what man is he that liveth and shall not see death? Shall he deliver his soul from the hand of the grave? The answer is no. We all see death. And the word there for grave is the word Sheol. And Ezekiel 32, verse 27, we read of a battle that was foretold between the power of Egypt and the power of Babylon. And the Babylonians win. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, his forces won. It's a prophecy of that event before it happened. And through the Spirit, Ezekiel testifies that the host of Pharaoh shall not receive a decent burial. They'll just be slaughtered, and they won't have any military burial. They shall not lie with the mighty, the soldiers and warriors generally amongst the nations that are fallen, which are gone down to hell with the weapons of war. And they have laid their swords under their heads. That's the normal method amongst the nations at that time, was to give the fallen warriors, to give them a military funeral, bury them with military honours. So much so that they buried their swords with them, their weapons. They laid them in the grave under the heads of the dead soldier, and so they were buried with full military honours. But that was not to be the case with Pharaoh's host. They were just going to be slaughtered en masse and left, as it were. So he's saying of Pharaoh's host, they shall not lie with the mighty warriors that are fallen amongst the nations, for they are gone down to hell with the weapons of war, and they have laid their swords under their heads. Now, if we switch back, this word Sheol there should therefore be grave. That's obviously the grave. But if we say, let's try to impose the traditional hell on this word hell in the King James Version here, which have gone down to hell, does it fit the traditional hell? Do soldiers that are killed in battle, do they go to hell with their weapons of war? Are the weapons of war laid under their heads in that place of eternal torment that they imagine to be? It doesn't fit, does it? So there's nothing about the Bible hell that fits the traditional hell. Pharaoh's host, as we say, was slain by Nebuchadnezzar's forces. So then, if there is no traditional hell, if the Bible hell, the real hell, is the grave, it's just a misnomer to call it hell, which the King James has fallen into on occasion, that is, then hell, according to tradition, is supposed to be the abode of the devil. And if hell is the grave, there's no place then for the traditional devil that's supposed to live and rule in an underworld, tormenting immortal souls for all eternity. There's no place in the grave for the devil. So we need to look at this then. What is the Bible devil? So that is our proposal for the next talk, but we have a little more to say. Psalm 6, with more examples. Psalm 6, verse 4 and 5. Return, O Lord, deliver my soul. O save me for thy mercy's sake. For in death there is no remembrance of thee. In the grave, who shall give thee thanks? And again, the word grave, there is the word sometimes translated in the King James Version, hell, but it's Sheol. It's obviously the grave. And Psalm 31, verse 17, let me not be ashamed, O Lord, for I have called upon thee. Let the wicked be ashamed. Let them be silent in the grave. Well, if we then were to see this word Sheol as meaning the traditional hell, that doesn't work either, does it? The church would say that the wicked, they go to hellfire torments for all eternity. Here it says they are silent in the grave. So we see now the traditional hell is not in the Bible, excuse me. And we see that it is basically the grave in the Bible, the word hell. So finally, we look at Revelation again, and a quote from Hebrews, chapter 1, verse 18. Jesus, in his revelation to John, he declares, he says, I am he that liveth and was dead, and behold, I am alive for evermore. Amen. And have the keys of hell and of death. Now, this being the New Testament, the original is in Greek, so it's the Greek word Hades, which is the equivalent of the Hebrew Sheol. They've rendered it hell in the King James Version. But it should be rendered the grave. He has the keys of the grave and of death. Now, what does this mean? It means he has the power to raise the dead from out of their graves and make them live forever if they please him, if they've been obedient. So he has this power. When did he get this power? And how did he get it? Well, we're told that it was through his sacrifice. Hebrews 2:14, his sacrifice and his own resurrection from the dead. He was then given the power to raise his friends. And it came about as we read Hebrews 2:14. For as much then as the children are partakers of flesh and blood, it's talking about the Lord Jesus here. He, Jesus, also himself likewise took part of the same, that through death, a sacrificial death, he might destroy him that had the power of death, that is the devil. So what then is the Bible devil? He's not got any place where he can live. He's only associated with death and the grave. So if the traditional hell is not in the Bible, then the traditional devil is not in the Bible. So we need to look at this. So on our next Bible Bites, God willing, we intend to consider what is the Bible devil. Thank you for listening.